The Chargers defense was awesome on Monday Night Football, and rookie Tuli Tuipulotu really announced himself to the country with his monster game, and it's time to start mentioning him in the Defensive Rookie of the Year race.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen today, and to make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Today, Daniel, we are going to get into our buy or sell. We're going to talk about, is it time for Tuli Tuipulotu to get that recognition in the Defensive Rookie of the Year race? And is it time to really finally say that the Chargers defense is legitimately good?
That is such a good question because they're coming off of such a good performance. But this episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. David, this is one of the things I have seen floating around as far as potentially a big storyline or overreaction, things we like to usually get to on Tuesday, and now it's on Wednesday this week. But Defensive Rookie of the Year is something that's special to the Chargers because they have a history of especially defenders winning Defensive Rookie of the Year. So the Chargers buy or sell is this: Tuli Tuipulotu should get Defensive Rookie of the Year consideration.
Absolutely, yes. I'm buying it 1,000%. Tuli Tuipulotu has been unbelievable to start his career with the Chargers. I mean, I think that's really the best word to describe it. When you're talking about the top of the pass rushing numbers here, Byron Young leads all of rookies with 5 sacks and 31 pressures. Tuli is right behind him, right on his heels, second in sacks and in pressures, tied with Jalen Carter. 4 sacks, 29 pressures generated. And it's not even just the pass rush element of Tuli's game. He's been just as effective as a run stopper as well, setting a physical edge so much more than his 21-year-old age. Tuli has been fantastic so far to start his Chargers career.
That is truly Tuipulotu. I mean, he has been awesome, and he's not only been the best run defending edge rusher rookie, right? He's just been one of the best edge rushers that can defend the run in the NFL. Like, he has been one of the best run defenders at his position. I mean, Pro Football Focus grades obviously take with a grain of salt, but he ranks 3rd of anyone with 50 run defense snaps so far this season.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a big sample size.
Yeah, I mean, it's DeMarcus Lawrence, Max Crosby, Tuli Tuipulotu. Like,
that's some rarefied company. That's the company you want to be in.
Yeah, and I mean, Byron Young for the Rams, obviously he's gotten a lot more opportunities, right? 2 more pressures in a whole nother game.
Yeah,
right?
one more full game.
59 more pass rushing snaps. I think that makes a big difference because that's the thing about Tuli. He's not even starting. Like he's not even the full-time starter for this team right now. He's coming in, and they're doing a good job of getting him in the game, especially in the last game. Yeah. They've done a good job of balancing that with 3 guys that legitimately could all start right now. But number 1 run defense grade of any edge rusher rookie, really any kind of rusher of any kind, like linebacker, interior, whatever. 3rd in run stop percentage, 3rd highest run defense grade amongst all edge rushers. This is the hard thing because he plays the right position for it, and these are kind of the politics and semantics that always go into these things. But run defense isn't sexy, right? The sack numbers are going to be the sexiest thing, and he's right there. I mean, there's a good chance for him to lead the NFL in sacks for all rookies, right? That is a possibility. But he's going up against guys who came as first-round picks, and that's going to be the hard thing, right? I mean, you have guys like Jalen Carter, guys like Will Anderson, both guys who were picked in the top 10, and they're going to get a lot of the attention because they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Sure.
Tuli Tuipulotu, on the other hand, was like the 13th edge rusher picked in this draft. Like, it's crazy how many were picked ahead of him because he has been so good so far this season. So I think for him, And, maybe some corners get in the race too. But, I mean, 3 of the last 4 have been edge rushers last year. It ended up being Sauce Gardner, and we all saw what he did on Monday, right? We know how good that dude is. But it would be awesome to see if he could continue that legacy. Sean Merriman, Joey Bosa, maybe Tuli Tuipulotu. But he probably has to lead it by several sacks, I think, to actually to win it, right? But that's somehow not out of the question, even with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa pretty healthy at this point. So, speaking of edge rushers, David, this brings up another buy or sell, especially after the performance the Chargers had on Monday night. 8 sacks, 2+ sacks apiece by the Chargers edge rush trio of the 3 guys we just talked about. So this is the buy or sell here. The Chargers have the best trio of edge rushers in the NFL.
Yes, indeed, they do. I am buying it, and it's been really, really impressive to see what they've been able to do. This right here is the vision. This is exactly what the Chargers wanted to be able to put out there when they brought Khalil Mack in, when they drafted Tuli Tuipulotu. Khalil Mack has 9 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 8 tackles for loss. Joey Bosa has 6.5 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 5 tackles for loss. Tuli, 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. And by the way, this stat from Daniel Popper right here is truly beautiful. Tuipulotu, Mack, and Bosa have been on the field for 40 dropbacks so far this season. They have 10 sacks on those plays. That's a 25% sack rate, according to True Media. The league average is 6.8%.
Yeah.
That is how dominant that these guys have been when they are on the field and all collectively rushing the passer.
Yeah, 40 seems like not enough. Bosa missed some time, so that's a part of that. But
yeah,
more of that, please, because don't forget about Morgan Fox, who has
5.5 sacks himself. Yeah,
top 3 in defensive tackles and sacks this year already creeping into the 6.5 he got.
That
last
contract
year.
looking amazing.
I mean, he's awesome, man. He had another sack in this last game too. He's great. I mean, 19.5 sacks right now for the 3 guys that you guys mentioned, right? The 3 guys you mentioned are already at 19.5.
That's wild.
We're not even officially halfway through the season. If you add Morgan Fox to that, those 4 are on pace for 50+ sacks this year. That's an insane number. The Chargers average the most sacks by any team in the NFL so far this season. But this is what sets it apart to me, David. Not just those numbers. All 3 of those guys are plus run defenders.
Yeah.
All of them. They're complete edge rushers, and that's the great part about it. I mean, all 3 of those guys are ranked top 22 in the Pro Football Focus run defense grade so far this season. There's a couple of teams that have 2 in the top 22. There's no other team that has 3 in the top 22, and it's not even really close, right? So what those guys have been able to do, I think you can easily say that they fit in that category of the best trio of edge rushers. The Chargers have an embarrassment of riches at that position right now, for sure. Chris Rupp, we'll see, but let's go to the next buy or sell here, David, for a guy who actually I think surprised a lot of people, myself included, with the game that he had on Monday Night Football, and that's Tito Abonia, a guy that was a fourth round pick in 2022, ruptured his patella tendon in Week 10 last year, comes in last night, has the 2nd highest grade from Pro Football Focus, and it showed. He looked really, really good out there, David. So it's only 1 game, but the buy or sell is this: Chargers may have found something in Tito Abonia.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly impressive to see the fact that he came off of a very serious injury, an injury that takes careers from other players, and not only came back, but came back and played exceptionally well, like he didn't miss any time at all. An 82.9 overall grade. 4 pressures generated from the middle of the interior of the defensive line. I think that's the most exciting part of it for me. Not only that, him shedding blocks, him being able to take on double teams, and just being obscenely large in the middle of the defensive line. You need that. Brandon Staley said, I want to bring some size and some absolute beef into the middle of that interior. Yeah. Tito definitely does that for you. He's been great.
4 pressures in the game last night. 4 pressures in 7 games in 2023 for Tito Abonia.
Crazy.
He had his best game of his career, and it was coming off of a serious injury. Almost halfway through the season, he comes off and does that. But what an unexpected boost for the interior of this pass rush. Really good push in the pocket that helped out the edge rushers a lot in this last game. And also the ability, David, I think, to just be that physical dude in the middle. That's not going to get pushed around. He did that for them last night. Very nice to see. But we have more to get into because we talked a lot about this. But are any of us actually considering that the Chargers have a good defense now? We're going to get into that right after this. First, I need to tell you guys about where you should be getting the tickets to any event that you're going to attend, and that is Game Time. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you, and also where David just secured his tickets to Lambeau Field when the Chargers take on the Packers. So stoked for him. He got his tickets with Game Time, and he also saved himself $20 by using the code LOCKEDONNFL for that $20 off his first purchase with Game Time. So excited about that. But the best thing about Game Time is the Game Time guarantee, which means that you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. I know you're getting the best price with Game Time. They do too, and they have promotions going on there too where they can pick your spot in a section. If you pick the section, you can save an average of 18% on those tickets too. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. David, let's continue this Chargers buy or sell, getting into the biggest storylines and overreactions after the latest game on Monday Night Football, where the Chargers clawed back to 500. And we have seen this Chargers defense, David, go on some stretches. Last year, it was a 4-game stretch towards the end of the season, right? It would have been weeks 14 through 17, right? Because they ended up getting smoked in week 18 against the Broncos kind of out of nowhere. But we saw a dominant stretch. Those have been few and far between under Brandon Staley since he's taken over, right? In the first year, personnel wasn't his. Second year, they spend a bunch of money, still doesn't kind of get where they need it to be. This year, no more excuses, right? That's the big thing. We're seeing it start to play much better, David. And this is the question. This is the buy or sell, I guess, here today. The Chargers defense is good. Are you going to buy that at this point of the season?
Man, it's so difficult because like the last two performances were fantastic. I think first and foremost, a couple of things that we do absolutely know is the Chargers' run defense is legitimately good. I mean, they're tied with Cleveland for the sixth in the NFL in rushing yards allowed, and also rushing yards per game at yards per carry at 3.7 yards per carry. That's 1.8 yards less per carry than last year.
Are you buying it or selling it, though, David? Because I'm not talking about run defense. We're talking about the Chargers defense. I need to know. Are you buying it or are you selling it?
I am going to sell it. Okay, I'm going to sell it. The Chargers pass rush is exceptionally good as well. We know the run defense is good. I just need to see it against a legitimately good offense.
And we're going to have a chance.
If they do that, I'm going to say it right now.
Yeah.
If they do that, what they did to the Jets, to the Lions on Sunday, then I don't think anybody will have any chance to say that they are not a legitimately good defense.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at this Chargers defense, I'm going to sell it too because like last year, what you're seeing is against bad teams what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like the Raiders, the Bears, and the Jets are who they've had their 3 best defensive performances against. And those are all teams that don't have good offenses at the very least, right? And bad teams for the most part, and 2 or 3 of those. Vikings, hard to say, especially. I mean, you face the strongest version of them, for sure. But my problem is in the secondary. Like, that's the part of this I don't trust. I mean, they're allowing 7.2 yards per pass attempt, which is 28th in the NFL. They have the 4th most big passes allowed so far this year, which is 20-plus yards, right? Explosive passes. They're tied for the 8th most explosive plays allowed as a defense. 21st in points per game allowed. So, by the numbers, they're not an above-average defense right now.
Yeah.
They're creeping close to average, though.
And
how many times
have we
said we will take an average defense, right? And I think you might be able to sell me on the Chargers having an average defense where, they have some obvious weaknesses, but they also have some really big strengths as well, right?
Some legitimate strengths,
And those strengths are going to have to show up for you again this week against, one of the best teams that you've played so far this season in the Detroit Lions at home. So I'm not willing. I'm selling it for right now. I agree with you, though. You asked me this question. We do this buy or sell next week, and they go out there and do something to the Lions, and it looks really good. It doesn't even have to be 10 points, 13 points. If they go out and, allow 20 points to the Lions, I'd be impressed with that, right? So they'll have a chance to convince us this weekend. But enough talking about the defense. Enough talking about the Chargers offense, which is a lot to talk about too. This is the buy or sell I have here for you, David. The Chargers special teams is actually one of the 3 units that is the team's best unit. The Chargers special teams is actually better than their offense and their defense.
As crazy as that sounds, I think that's true. I'm going to buy it. The Chargers special teams unit has been one of the most consistent units throughout this season. I mean, they had a couple of hiccups early. I mean, I think some of the punts were not as good as you had.
The punt unit was the weakest spot for sure.
But that has improved. I mean, that has improved over the last couple of games. The kick return game is non-existent because nobody really returns kicks. But the
Darius
punt return
Davis
game
has 2 kick returns so far this year. That's
exactly. But the
yeah.
punt return game is real. Darius Davis is in the top 5 in punt return yards, and also you have a kicker that's making all of his kicks, including the ones that are 50+ yards down the football field. So the Chargers special teams unit has consistently performed above average. All hail Ryan Ficken.
Yeah, hail Ryan Ficken, hail Cameron Dicker. I mean, 2 spots, special teams coordinator, kicker that have just been so far, up in the air. There's so many seasons where you just don't know what you're going to expect. And also just the special teams being one of the worst, if not the worst units in the entire league. You have a return guy now you feel good about. You have a coordinator you feel good about. You have a kicker you feel great about. Cameron Dicker, 14 of 15 this season, 92.9%, better than Justin Tucker, better than most of the NFL. Perfect inside of 50, and even when he's been beyond 50, he's 4 of 5 on 50+ yard field goals, including 2 55-yarders this year.
Just beautiful.
Tell me the last time a Chargers kicker has made 2 55-yarders in the same season. You're going to have to go back through the database. But Darius Davis, to your point, averaging 16.6 yards per punt return, 3rd in the league. He has the 2nd most total return yards in the NFL. I guess the only thing here, no punt or field goal blocks. I guess if you're nitpicking, J.K. Scott is playing better. The coverage units are very good outside of the big return they gave up against the Chiefs that ended up leading to that touchdown. Besides that, everything's been smothered. Even last week, smothering on the coverage units for the most part. Not allowing pretty much anything. Guys making tackles, guys making open field tackles, staying in their lanes, really
setting up their blocks for Darius Davis too. Yeah.
Chef's kiss from the Chargers special teams. They are one of the best special teams units in the league. And that's the one thing like Pro Football Focus I think has them 15th. No chance they're the 15th best special teams in the league. This is one of the best Chargers special teams units I've ever seen in covering this team.
That's all we care about.
This team. Let's sneak this one in here, David, because we all know what Keenan Allen did on Monday Night Football. Surpassed 10,000 receiving yards, which is so freaking many, right? And he said one thing. I'm trying to catch Gates. That's what he said. Can he do it, though? Keenan Allen will catch Antonio Gates' receiving yards record and his receptions record by or sell.
I'm buying it. I've said it, and I'll say it again. Keenan Allen is a Charger for life. I think he is going to sign another contract with the Chargers. I think they're going to figure that out. And
that's
I think
a big part of it here, right? Because he's under contract right now through 2024. Right. I think he's done more than enough where I think he'll be on the roster in 2024. I don't know how you get rid of him at this point. Like,
you can't.
He's stayed on the field more than anyone else. He's been the best receiver when he's out there, performed against the best secondary in the league. But that is a big part of it. If you think he's signing another contract, though, I mean, that makes the numbers a little easier to get to.
It does, for sure, because Antonio Gates has 955 receptions. Keenan Allen right now is sitting at 858. Gates has 11,841 receiving yards. Keenan, as you know, just surpassed 10,000 at 10,007. Yeah. He is averaging 90 receiving yards per game. So if he stays on that projection, he should rack up at least another 810 yards, which would put him at a 1,530-yard receiving season. And that's definitely doable. If he does that, I mean, it might only take another season to be able to get there. So, yeah, I'm going to buy it. I think Keenan Allen will be on top of both of those metrics in a season or two.
And we can both agree the one thing he's not catching him in is touchdowns.
Yeah, that's
because
not
Antonio Gates has basically doubled Keenan Allen's career touchdowns. But this is the crazy thing. Keenan Allen's this close. He's played 102 fewer games than Antonio Gates did in his
That's
career.
wild.
What Keenan's doing and the pace that he's on, obviously at 2 different positions, is
sure,
pretty
of course.
nuts. But let's just assume that he's under contract through 2024 and that's it, right? And maybe he retires after that. Who knows?
Yeah.
He needs 97 more catches for the most in franchise history right now. He's on pace. You said, 1,500 yards. He's on pace for 132 catches this season, right? So that's 70 more catches than he has right now. So that number could be as low as, 38 catches going into next season or 37 catches. Very doable, very possible. He needs 1,834 receiving yards. So he might need another 1,000-yard receiving season next year to get to that number. It's going to be close. I'm going to buy it. You can tell he's out there trying to do it. I think the Chargers will give him a chance to, maybe we see the Chargers clean house. Maybe that changes things, with new voices coming in, them trying to get whatever the salary cap is under control in 2024. But how do you let go the heart and soul of your offense, frankly? I just don't know if you can, especially when he's playing as good as he is right now. But we have much more to get into because this Chargers season is suddenly starting to give Chargers fans some hope. But it does feel like this offensive line could sink things if they don't get better soon. So we're going to get into that. And also, if it's time to give Josh Kelly as many or maybe even more carries than Austin Eckler in the running game to try to get things going. We're getting to that coming up right after this. First, though, I do need to tell you guys about DoorDash, which is one of my favorite things ever and one of the best things that you need for your Sundays with football season around right now. Because once that 10 o'clock hour hits Pacific time, that's like 7 straight hours of football. You don't have the chance to leave your house most days. If you need the dip, if you need the groceries even delivered to your house, you can get that with DoorDash. And one of the best things is always about finding the local spots in your area to hit up. We always talk about local spots in different restaurants, but did you realize that you can get donuts delivered right to your front door? Today, we are locked on the iconic Randy's Donuts. Nothing pairs better with the start of a full day of football like donuts. With DoorDash, you could have some bacon maple donuts or even maple churro donuts in minutes, or you could go with the wide variety of donut holes with toppings like Fruity Pebbles or sprinkles. Randy Donuts, I know you've seen the giant donut. It's iconic. You can get that delivered to you with DoorDash, and you can get 50% off up to a $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order when you download the DoorDash app and enter the promo code LOCKED23. Subject to change, terms apply, but that's 50% off. $10 off your potential donuts when you spend $15 or more on your first order with the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23. Subject to change. Terms apply. Let's finish up this buy or sell, David, here because we have some big ones to get into because I am still very, very concerned about this Chargers offensive line. But I do need to tell you guys to make sure you're checking out on Fridays the NFL Kickoff Live show, which has hosts Jarvis Davis, Tanitra Batiste, and also Kyle Krabs going into every single matchup of the NFL slate that weekend and getting the insight from the local experts from around the league. You like Locked On Chargers, you could hear from all of the local Locked On experts to see how they are feeling about those games and learn there. Make sure you guys check that out every Friday on every Locked On NFL channel, the Locked On NFL Kickoff Live show. Let's get into this buy or sell, though, here, David, because this is the first one for me. We talked about the offense yesterday doing enough, but the one thing we were concerned about is the offensive line. How concerned, though, right? How big of a deal is it? So this is the buy or sell here today. The Chargers offensive line will sink this season if they're not better.
Yeah, it's a buy for me. I mean, the Chargers offensive line has been bad. I mean, I don't think there's really any other way.
What are they good at?
To put it. I mean,
what are they good at?
That's a legitimate question. I mean, I don't think that they're really good at either aspect of playing the offensive line position. They're not opening up a lot of holes in the running game, and they're getting Justin Herbert murdered. I mean, Rashawn Slater's given up 24 pressures. Trey Pipkins has given up 25 pressures. Zion's given up 19. Salyer's given up 16. And Will Clapp, who's only played a couple of games instead of Corey Linsley, has given up 11. And, oh, by the way, Trey Pipkins has given up 5 sacks already this season. He has been getting beat up, but also we haven't seen the best version of Rashawn Slater either. I mean, he's been dealing with injuries. It's been pretty tough. But if they don't switch things around, if they don't start opening up holes, if they don't start getting their protection calls better and more consistent, then this absolutely will sink the season because Justin Herbert can't throw the ball when he's on his back.
This was a really telling stat from Arjun Manan, who's great on Twitter, who said Justin Herbert was pressured on 59.5% of his dropbacks yesterday, the third highest number for any offense this season, and LAC still put up 20 offensive points. Obviously, one drive started on the 2-yard line, sidebar. The two performances with a higher pressure percentage, the Raiders in Week 8, who scored 7 offensive points, Giants in Week 1, who scored 0 offensive points. So, think about this, David. This is something I said to you. Zach Wilson was pressured at a lower percentage on Monday Night Football, a game he was sacked 8 times in, than Justin Herbert was on Monday Night Football.
That's
and
so
that
hard
Gents
to
front is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
But every single Chargers offensive lineman gave up at least 3 pressures. Your tackles gave up 15 between the two of them. It just has to be better, man. And the problem is there's no easy fix for it.
No.
Like, Kellen Moore has to start helping these guys more. I don't care if it's Rashawn Slater. These guys can't keep being left on islands. The hard thing is, though, is the way that Zion Johnson and Jamari Sawyer have struggled, right, and the quick losses that they've suffered in pass protection. Just helping the tackles isn't going to fix everything. With the uncertainty of Corey Linsley and if he's going to come back at all this season, I just don't see how it gets fixed. And not only is that bad for this year, what does the future look like? You have two first-round picks invested in this offensive line. You have the highest-paid center or up there in the league. You just paid your right tackle a 3-year contract, and he's in year 1 of that underperforming. And then you have Jamari Sawyer, who obviously is a 6th-round pick, a cheap guy, but like, what do you do going forward? Do you spend more first-round picks on this? Or, I think who goes into next season without competition, right? How, because it feels like you have to get a center next year because of what's happening with Will Clapp and also just uncertainty around Corey Linsley's future.
Yeah.
There's no easy fix for it. And they're going to play lesser fronts than the one they played against the Jets. That's one of the best they're going to face all season.
Oh, yeah.
But it wasn't just the Jets game. That was the problem. And you're going to have more dominant edge rushers still coming up and more dominant pass rushers like you did when you had to face Micah Parsons and Max Crosby and all the guys, Chris Jones. Like, those are guys you're still going to have to see again for the most part outside of, Micah Parsons. But, like, it's hard, man. And it does feel like out of all the things that could sink this season, like if they can't give Justin Herbert time to keep up in some of these games where they're going up against better offenses, like this week specifically, I don't know how they're going to win enough games to keep this season relevant if they don't perform better. And I think they can, but I don't think it's like you're not going to get a total night and day transformation from this group.
Yeah, you got to go out there and do it.
Yeah, which is easier said than done, as we've learned. But let's get into this last buy or sell right here, David. With the Chargers running game not doing anything and again kind of struggling. 4 yards per carry, boosted a little bit by some Justin Herbert carries in the last game. Running back still nothing to write home about. But the buy or sell is this. Joshua Kelly should get more carries than Austin Eckler.
Yes. I'm sorry. Joshua Kelly has been the more effective running back in the last several games. Last 4 games, he's played 17 carries, 116 yards, 6.8 yards per carry average. Obviously, that has the 49-yard touchdown.
By the 49-yarder.
Yeah, it's in there. It's part of those numbers. But it just seems like just by the eye test, every time that Joshua Kelly gets the ball, he is shooting through a hole and he's picking up 4 or 5 yards. This Chargers run offense needs that desperately. They desperately need that. And it will help out the offensive line, too. It will help out the offenses because you're going to have shorter fields. You're going to be able to keep possession. Joshua Kelly needs to get more than 2 or 3 carries in the football game. That's just unacceptable.
I think the biggest problem of what you said right there is you brought up the last 4 games.
Yeah.
He's only had 17 carries the last 4 games, right?
Exactly.
That means he's getting, just over 4 attempts per game right now. And then the nice thing I think about this specific comparison is Austin Eckler has 73 carries. Josh Kelly has 74 carries. So, it's just about the same. Austin Eckler, 3.6 yards per carry. Joshua Kelly, 4.4 yards per carry. If you take away the 49-yard run, right, the ultimate equalizer, you take that away, Josh Kelly's still averaging 3.8 yards per carry. So, it's still better than Austin Eckler, even with that big run taken away. I think you saw in the last game on that short yardage toss to Austin Eckler what he can do. The contact balance is crazy. Yeah. You get him outside the numbers, he's better. If you're running in between the tackles, it should be Josh Kelly. He's the more physical back. He's getting you more consistently, like getting you the tough yards up the middle. And then the last game, I think his first 2 carries went for 16 yards, right? A nice 5-yard carry, had a 10-yard carry where he hurdled a guy, and he only got 1 carry the rest of the game. Like, how does that make sense?
It doesn't.
So if you're trying to fix your running game, like he missed some really big holes early in the season. When he had the chance to be the main carrier, it didn't go well, right? Like we've seen him be the main ball carrier, and it didn't go well. He's been carrying the ball better, and I think you just need, at the very least a more equal split. That's all. Get a more equal split. See if you can get this run game started because you couldn't do it against a team that was, bottom third of the league in yards per carry allowed last week. We'll see what it's like this week against a much, much better Detroit Lions run defense. You're going to have another tough test. But to talk about that, make sure you're back here tomorrow for Crossover Thursday, Locked On Lions, Locked On Chargers. The Chargers get another chance to show that they can be a good team. A huge statement game on the horizon on Sunday for the Chargers. Matt Derry and me will be breaking it down, getting the biggest matchups and best storylines. To make sure you don't miss it, Go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show on our social media. You can find us on Twitter at LockedOnLAC, me on Twitter at DanTalkSports, and David Drogemeyer at DroTalkSD. You can also find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. So make sure you guys are back here tomorrow. Crossover Thursday, one of the best shows of the week. Always really excited to get one of the best on the network on the show to talk about this upcoming matchup. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.